The monthly jobs report was released today by the U.S. Department of Labor, and there was an analysis done by economist Emmanuel Saez on income inequality in America. And both of these reports overall are not looking too good. So let's get right into it. First, the June jobs report. So last month, the economy added 223,000 jobs overall, barely missing the government's estimate of 230,000 jobs. And the unemployment rate fell from 5.5% to just 5.3%. Well, on the surface, you're probably saying, what's wrong with that? Nearly 95% of the country now has a job, and 223,000 people just last month got a job. That's great, right? Just wait, there's more. The main reason why the unemployment rate dropped in June was because many people simply gave up looking for jobs. In fact, the percentage of Americans who are either working or looking for work hit a 38-year low. So the real reason behind this drop in unemployment rate is that Americans, they're done. They've lost hope. They realize that it's harder and harder for average middle-class people to get back into the job market once they're kicked out. So they're done. They've lost hope. They're sick and tired of this economy. That is a terrible, terrible development. Now, of those 223,000 jobs added back into the economy, most of them are only low-wage jobs. That probably explains why the average hourly pay of American workers remained flat throughout the month and has barely risen 2% on average each year since the recession. So yeah, on the surface, American worker situations seem to be on the uptick. But if your wages are barely rising and your workforce is shrinking, your entire economy is in trouble. Now, to the analysis done by Emmanuel Saez. So according to this report, as of 2014, families have only recovered 40% of the incomes they lost in the recession 6 years ago. Yeah, that's not good. In the top 1% in 2014, they netted 21% of all the income. Over a fifth of all the income is going to the top 1%, the richest 1%. And while average American families have only recovered 40% of the income they lost in the recession, the top 1%, man, they have gotten 58% of all the income gains since the end of the recession, according to this report. And I've actually heard numbers way higher than that, saying that the top 1% has gotten all of the income gains since the end of the recession. Either way, that is terrible. But I haven't even gotten to the worst of this yet. So check out this graph. This graph shows the top 10% share of all of the income historically, dating all the way back to 1917. So you see that there are two high points of the top 10%'s income share. One in the roaring 20s when we had the artificial economy, the stock market bubble, the rich keep getting richer, the poor and the middle class keep getting squeezed. That's not sustainable, we all know that. We have the richest top 10% getting nearly half of the income. That is key. And then you see right after that high point in the 20s, boom, it plummets. What is this? The Great Depression, of course. You had a quarter of the country unemployed, the economy collapsed, average Americans' incomes plummeted, it was a disaster. But the progressive hero, FDR, swooped in and saved the day with the New Deal, creating a world-renowned infrastructure system, creating millions of jobs in the process. He created Social Security, making sure our elderly are able to have something to fall back on. We're regulating Wall Street, raising taxes on the rich, and pretty soon the gap was closed. Now the top 10%, they're only making 35% of all the income, which is much more reasonable. It was balanced, and we created the strongest middle class in the world, and it lasted for nearly 40 years. But then the late 70s and the 80s roll around, and look what happens. It starts going up. It starts steadily rising once Carter gets in office in 76, and once Reagan gets in office, and boy, it never looks back. And of course, this coincides in 1977 when the Supreme Court says money is free speech and allows money to corrupt the political system, starting with that terrible, terrible decision. And then it keeps on rising. Even the Great Recession barely put a dent into it by 2008. All the while, average American families are getting a smaller and smaller piece of the pie. Our incomes are barely rising, but we're working harder and harder than ever, busting our butts. But guess what? We lost our bootstraps, and now we can no longer pull ourselves up. And then in 2012, look what happens. The top 10% now claim more than half of all of the income, the same mark that we reached right before the Great Depression. And now in 2015, we reached it again. Now, why does this matter? Who gives a flying crap about some dumb graph? Think about it. Again, what happened right before the Great Depression? You got the Wall Street bubble. Nearly 50% of all the income going to the top 10%. Poor and middle class keep getting screwed. Boom! Crash. 25% unemployment. Wages plummet. The economy collapses. Look what's happening now. The Wall Street bubble. 50% of all income going to the top 10%. Poor and middle class keep getting screwed. You connect the dots. We could be seeing the beginning of an economic crash. All of the patterns are the exact same. The rich keep getting richer. The poor and the middle class keep getting squeezed. The top 10% getting 50% of all the income. I mean, it's the exact same situation. It's comical how similar they are. We all should be very, very worried. But I'll tell you this though. Look on the bright side. If you want to change the situation, you have got to get Bernie freaking Sanders in office and get the Democrats back in control of DC. If we do that, it's over. It is over. If we somehow get the Democrats a supermajority in the Senate with a progressive leading the charge in the White House, we can get this country back on track. Bernie Sanders wants tuition-free college, health care for all, end the student loan crisis, all of these things, rebuild our crumbling infrastructure, and create millions of jobs. We're talking New Deal 2.0 types of programs. And if people come out to vote in 2016, a supermajority for the Democratic Party is not out of the question. And if it ever manages to happen, all of Bernie's policies can pass, and our economy is back on the right track. But if we do not curb these disastrous economic policies of catering to the rich and screwing over the poor and the middle class, we're going to be seeing a major economic collapse. It happened before under the exact same circumstances, and it will happen again if we don't do something about this. Because the establishment, man, it is quite mistaken. The rich and the major corporations are not the job creators. They do not make the economy run. But you know who does? The middle class. The middle freaking class and the working class. Ordinary folks. They are the backbone of the society. Do not forget that. If the middle class and working class are broke and unemployed and struggling to keep their heads above water, it's simple. There's nobody there to buy the corporations' stuff. It's over. Bottom line. If the middle class suffers, the economy suffers. If the middle class thrives, the whole economy thrives. Remember that graph, man. For 40 years, America's middle class and economy was the envy of the world. Because everybody had the opportunities to be successful. The pie, everybody had a significant chunk of it. It was more evenly spread. But then, look at what we're doing right now. We're doing the same stuff we were doing 80, 90 years ago, which caused the Great freaking Depression. If you want a quarter of the country unemployed, if you want the economy to collapse, keep doing what you're doing, man. Keep sitting there, just surfing through the channels, watching Fox News and just laying away being an ignorant douche. And just go and vote Republican and just sit on your butt and do nothing. But if you want to change this and create an economy that works for everybody, get off your butt and vote for Bernie Sanders in 2016 and the Democratic Party. Because I can guarantee you, if we do that, we can create an economy that works for everybody and create long-term prosperity. The time is now. Feel the burn, man. We have got to get this economy back on track, or else the poor and the middle class will continue to be screwed, and then everybody is going to get screwed, because Great Recession 2.0 is going to happen. Mark my freaking words. Remember, vote Bernie Sanders and fix this economy right now.